Modern eyes often see the Olympians as towering figures of pristine marble and morality, governing the entire cosmos with serene wisdom. The ancient Greeks knew the reality. The pantheon operated like a violent, dysfunctional mafia family. Order was not maintained by mutual respect or a divine constitution. The hierarchy of the universe relied entirely on Zeus, his absolute authority, and the constant, terrifying threat, his thunderbolt. That peace only lasted as long as the underbosses felt slighted. A string of petty family grievances over Zeus's arrogance eventually boiled over into an outright coup to strip him of his power. These stories are a brutal chain of cause and effect, where every cosmic disaster can be traced back to an immortal holding an eternal grudge. The ambush was precise. Hera, Athena, and Poseidon waited until Zeus was asleep in his chambers before moving in to paralyze the king of heaven. They caught him completely vulnerable, pinning him to his bed and pulling tight 100 unbreakable golden knots. The conspirators immediately stole his master bolt, removing his only leverage and leaving the ruler of the gods entirely helpless. But the alliance collapsed the moment the throne was vacant. The gods instantly turned on one another, squabbling over which of them would claim Zeus's crown. While the traitors argued, a loyal sea nymph named Thetis saw an opening. She slipped away from the palace to find the one entity with physical strength to break a divine law. Petty ambition and an absolute inability to share their newfound power ultimately saved the universe from a total cosmic civil war. Thetis returned with Briareos, a terrifying 50-headed giant with 100 arms who remained fiercely loyal to the king. Briareos stormed the chambers and began tearing at the supposedly unbreakable restraints, using every one of his 100 hands at once. The giant's speed overwhelmed the conspirators, and he released his master before the usurpers could coordinate a response. Zeus reclaimed his thunderbolt in a state of absolute wrath. He faced a unique divine dilemma. He could not kill his family, so he had to find a way to punish beings who are immortal. The only true punishment for a god is the systematic destruction of their pride through total public humiliation. Zeus handed down a sentence that shocked Olympus. He stripped Poseidon and Apollo of their divine splendor and cast them down into the mortal realm. They were forced into grueling, unpaid manual labor, serving as bondservants for a mere human king. King Laomedon of Troy set the terms of their servitude. The gods would physically build the city's legendary defensive walls. For 1 full year, Poseidon, the mighty earthshaker, heaved massive megalithic stone blocks into place with his bare hands. The legendary impenetrable walls of Troy began as the direct byproduct of this humiliating divine prison sentence. When the walls were finally complete, King Laomedon committed a fatal error. He refused to pay the gods their agreed-upon wages. He didn't just withhold their pay. He threatened to cut off the ears of these former deities and sell them into slavery if they complained. Laomedon forgot that their sentence had an expiration date. Once the year was up, they were no longer simple laborers. They were gods again. Mortal hubris triggers the most violent mythological catastrophes when it attempts to mirror divine arrogance. The second the year of servitude ended, Poseidon's power rushed back into his body. He was no longer a mason. He was the master of the seas. Poseidon took immediate revenge, summoning a colossal sea monster from the depths to send walls of water crashing downward. Decades later, when the Greek fleet arrived to begin the Trojan War, Poseidon's anger had not faded. While the mortals fought over Helen and political power, the gods viewed the entire 10-year siege as round 2 of their original unresolved family feud. Poseidon fueled the eventual devastation of Troy with this decades-old grudge, watching with satisfaction as the very walls he had been forced by the universe based on merit or physical strength. They settled the fate of the cosmos through a blind drawing of lots. Zeus pulled the sky. Poseidon drew the sea. Hades was relegated to the underworld. Because the ruler of the cosmos was determined by a literal roll of the dice, the universe was instantly saddled with a fragile, unearned political hierarchy. Public perception often paints Zeus as an unshakable, absolute monarch. The political reality of his title was far more precarious. By law, he was merely first among equals. He possessed no natural superiority over Poseidon. Poseidon was assigned the oceans. This violent, unpredictable domain perfectly mirrored his own volatile and grudge-holding temperament. You see it in his tight grip on the trident, a god of coiled physical power. He finally reached a psychological breaking point, refusing to accept that a game of chance made him subordinate to his younger brother. Their divine power was strictly limited by jurisdiction. Zeus ruled the sky, but he had absolutely no legal authority in the sea. The Greek cosmic order was a simmering cold war between heavily armed brothers, waiting for a single spark. The cosmic treaty contained a massive geopolitical loophole. The Earth itself was declared unowned, common ground shared equally by all the gods. This shared turf turned human cities into proxy battlegrounds. Gods could assert their dominance here without triggering an all-out celestial war. Poseidon focused his aggression on a highly prosperous, patronless city located in eastern Greece, defined by a high rocky outcrop. He made an aggressive bid to claim the city, striking the Acropolis with his trident, tearing open the rock to create a surging saltwater spring. His strategy relied entirely on overwhelming brute force and environmental terror to bully the mortal citizens into exclusive worship. Zeus countered Poseidon's maneuver without stepping onto the battlefield himself. He backed a strategic proxy, his daughter, Athena. Poseidon brought terror and saltwater. Athena brought a highly calculated civilization-building gift, the first olive tree. The economic superiority was undeniable. A saltwater spring offered nothing practical, while the olive tree provided renewable food, oil, and wood. The citizens voted unanimously in favor of Athena's practical wisdom, legally renaming the city Athens. Humiliated, Poseidon reacted with petty rage. He flooded the surrounding mortal plains to punish the voters for their choice. This crushing political defeat proved to Poseidon that playing by the diplomatic rules of the treaty would never yield the supremacy he craved. Proxy wars could no longer contain their rivalry. The failure of diplomacy on Earth guaranteed direct, violent escalation on Olympus. Poseidon's festering resentment finally breached the treaty entirely, driving him to plot an active coup d'état. He gathered co-conspirators, Queen Hera and, ironically, his former rival Athena. The political allegiances of Mount Olympus were ruthlessly fluid. They executed the ambush cowardly, waiting until Zeus was asleep and physically vulnerable on his couch. They physically bound the king of the gods in rawhide thongs, knotting them 100 times over so he couldn't move. For an ancient audience, this was a shocking concept. The absolute ruler of the universe was helpless, humiliated, and effectively dethroned. The coup definitively exposed the fragility of Zeus's regime. Divine authority was only as secure as the physical force actively backing it up. Zeus couldn't save himself. He relied entirely on an external political alliance to survive the coup. The sea nymph Thetis intervened. She summoned the 100-handed giant Briareus to act as terrifying, overwhelming muscle for the trapped king. Briareus effortlessly untied the knots, using every hand at once, terrifying the conspirators into immediate, groveling submission. Zeus reclaimed his throne, but the victory was politically hollow. He punished the rebels briefly, but was eventually forced to pardon them. He needed their administrative power to keep the universe running. The Greek cosmos was not a perfectly ordered divine kingdom. It was a deeply flawed, unstable political system held together only by the constant, exhausting threat of mutually assured destruction.